Welcome in. If you're joining us today, you're stepping into a rather unusual intellectual experiment.
Yeah, unusual is definitely the word for it.
We have this piece of source material in front of us, and, it is astonishingly brief.
It's tiny.
Right. It reads almost like a fragment of a lost manuscript. But the mission for our deep dive today is to unpack the absolute density of the ideas trapped inside it.
Because there is so much there.
There really is. We are looking at a highly concentrated conceptual note that is entirely focused on Wall Street's ultimate enigma.
The Medallion Fund.
Exactly, this secretive medallion fund, which is managed by a firm called Renaissance Technologies. And the text intrinsically links all of this to a figure named Jim Simons.
Now, on the surface, hearing those names might suggest we are gearing up for a dry mechanical breakdown of algorithmic trading.
Like we're going to read a spreadsheet.
Right, or dissect market fluctuations for an hour. But that would be a complete misreading of what this text actually is.
What are we actually looking at here?
What we have here is not a financial ledger at all. It is a psychological profile of an entire culture.
Oh, I like that.
We are essentially looking at the blueprints of modern mythology. We're analyzing the precise architecture of what captures the public's imagination today.
So it's bigger than finance.
Much bigger. The text forces us to explore the concept of a financial cheat code. It asks us to dissect the anatomy of internet virality, specifically tailored for a U.S. audience.
Right.
And it forces us to interrogate this explosive intersection of extreme wealth, absolute secrecy, and the cultural trope of the genius.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
I want to start by asking you, the listener, to travel back in time for a second.
Let's do it.
Think about your favorite video game growing up. Consider the actual mechanics of that experience.
Yeah.
The endless grind. You had the frustration of being stuck on a difficult level, losing your resources, hitting a wall over and over again.
Just brutal repetition.
And then you discovered a sequence of buttons. Or maybe a strange phrase you had to type into a console menu.
Up, up, down.
Exactly. And the moment you enter that code, the physics of that digital universe fundamentally changed.
Suddenly you have infinite health.
You could walk right through walls. The game was no longer a struggle you were trying to survive. It was a sandbox you owned.
You became a god in that little digital world.
I want you to hold on to that specific feeling, that feeling of bypassing the struggle that every other player is forced to endure. Because the very first thing our source text does is explicitly label the Medallion Fund as a Wall Street cheat code.
Which is such a massive claim.
Yeah.
Calling a financial fund a cheat code is this profound metaphorical leap. It completely reframes the entity we're talking about.
How so?
Well, it demands we look at the financial markets not as this organic ecosystem of businesses and economic indicators, but as a deterministic simulation.
Like a machine.
Right, like a piece of software. If we take the analogy seriously, a cheat code simply cannot exist in a system governed by pure randomness.
Because if the stock market were truly a random walk, just pure unpredictable chaos like rolling dice, there is no code to input.
You can't hack a coin flip.
Exactly. You can't hack a coin flip.
So the phrase cheat code rejects the efficient market hypothesis entirely.
Yes.
It implies that beneath the apparent chaos of global buying and selling, beneath all the geopolitics and the quarterly earnings reports, there is a hidden, rigid, mathematical architecture.
And whoever holds this Medallion Fund cheat code hasn't merely optimized their strategy.
No, they've bypassed the user interface altogether. They have accessed the developer console.
They're reading the source code of global finance.
Which reframes the entire concept of Wall Street.
It really does. I mean, the cultural imagination generally views the market as this ultimate hyper-competitive arena.
The gladiator pit.
Right. It's perceived as a game played with billions of dollars, populated by sharp, aggressive minds trying to outmaneuver each other through fundamental analysis, risk assessment, sheer endurance.
That is the grind you were talking about earlier?
That is the grind. But a cheat code nullifies the grind.
Completely.
It means you aren't just a better player. It means the rules of gravity that bind everyone else simply do not apply to you.
Which introduces a really fascinating psychological tension.
I want to hear about that.
On one level, the idea that a Wall Street cheat code exists is deeply comforting to the human psyche.
Comforting.
Yeah.
That seems totally counterintuitive. I would think it implies the game is rigged, which usually sparks absolute outrage.
It does imply the game is rigged. But consider the alternative.
Okay.
The alternative is that the global economy, which dictates our livelihoods, our retirements, the cost of the food we buy, is entirely at the mercy of chaotic, uncontrollable forces.
That no one is driving the bus.
Exactly. It is terrifying to believe we are all just adrift in a storm.
Yeah, that is a dark thought.
So if a cheat code exists, it means the storm is actually a machine. It means the system can be mastered. Human intelligence is capable of deciphering the rules.
So there is a deep existential comfort in the idea that someone, somewhere, actually understands how the machine works.
Even if we don't, it satisfies our fundamental desire for order.
But the shadow side of that comfort is immense.
Oh, absolutely.
Because while it might be intellectually soothing to know the market is a solvable puzzle, from a practical standpoint, it is a nightmare.
A total nightmare for everyone else playing.
Right. If the system has been definitively hacked by someone else, the everyday participant, whether that's a retail investor putting away a few $100s a month for retirement, or even a seasoned hedge fund manager, they are all playing at an insurmountable disadvantage.
You are playing by the grinding, punishing rules of standard physics, while another entity is playing with infinite lives.
It renders the traditional effort almost meaningless.
It completely shatters the illusion of a meritocracy. And that inherent tension, the awe of the puzzle being solved, clashing with the existential dread of playing a rigged game, is the exact friction that generates virality.
Which brings us perfectly to the next point in the text.
Right.
The source text explicitly notes that this topic goes viral, and it specifically targets a U.S. audience.
Virality is never a random occurrence.
It's an emotional reaction at scale.
Exactly. So let's look at that specific parameter, the U.S. audience.
Why does a story about a secretive financial fund acting as a cheat code catch fire so aggressively in the American digital ecosystem?
Well, the American cultural relationship with the stock market is highly distinct.
How so?
In many parts of the world, financial markets are viewed as distant, institutional plumbing. It's the domain of central banks and old, aristocratic wealth.
Not something the average person engages with daily.
Right. But in the United States, the market has been culturally centralized and heavily democratized.
It's everywhere.
It is deeply intertwined with the ideology of the American dream. The concept of taking your capital, assuming personal risk, investing wisely, and manifesting upward mobility, that is a core pillar of the national ethos.
The market is practically treated as a spectator sport here.
A spectator sport and a public arena.
It's discussed in barbershops, at family dinners, on mainstream morning television shows. Everyone, from your dentist to your cab driver, has an opinion on a stock.
Exactly. The audience is already hyper-fixated on this specific game. But more importantly, American culture harbors this deep romantic fascination with the archetype of the hacker.
The maverick.
The maverick who finds the loophole that all the massive entrenched institutions completely missed.
So the virality of the Medallion Fund narrative mirrors the virality of Silicon Valley lore.
Yes, it's the story of a couple of outsiders in a garage who write a piece of code that topples a century-old monopoly. We love the underdog who beats the system.
But there is a massive twist here, isn't there? The Medallion Fund is not an underdog.
Not at all.
They are the ultimate apex predator of the system.
And that is the paradox that fuels the viral fire. They use the hacker ethos, that underdog methodology of finding the cheat code, to become the undisputed overlords.
They broke Wall Street at its own game.
And because this touches on money, which dictates survival status and personal freedom, the emotional hook completely bypasses logic.
It hits the nervous system directly.
It triggers a potent cocktail of envy, awe, injustice, and just this insatiable curiosity.
And what's wild is that the text actually gives us the specific formula for that cocktail.
It lays it right out.
It states that the reason this phenomenon goes viral is due to the combination of three very specific elements.
Extreme wealth.
Secrecy.
And the genius trope.
Let's really pull these apart, starting with extreme wealth. The modifier extreme is doing a ton of heavy lifting here.
It is the crucial distinction. In modern discourse, words like wealthy or rich usually describe purchasing power.
Right. The successful surgeon is wealthy. A franchise owner is wealthy.
But extreme wealth, especially in the context of institutional finance, transcends purchasing power entirely.
It enters the realm of physics.
It becomes an abstraction. We are talking about capital so massive that it exerts an actual gravitational pull on the economy itself.
It alters market dynamics simply by existing.
When you reach that tier, the money isn't used to buy luxury. It is used to buy reality.
That's a profound way to put it. buy reality.
It buys silence, it buys access, it buys the ability to shape global outcomes.
The human brain actually struggles to conceptualize the leap from millions to billions,
We aren't wired for it.
let alone the compounded theoretical returns of a perfectly optimized cheat code running for decades. The text is pointing to a scale of wealth that induces a kind of financial vertigo in the listener.
And that vertigo is immediately compounded by the second ingredient in the text.
Secrecy.
The text explicitly refers to the secretive medallion fund.
Now, secrecy in the information age is a fascinating paradox to me.
Why is that?
Well, we live in an era entirely defined by oversharing, by public relations, branding, and a constant demand for absolute transparency.
True.
We expect to be able to look up the exact supply chain of our morning coffee. We track the private jets of CEOs on social media.
We want to see everything.
So, when an entity achieving this level of extreme wealth actively operates as a completely sealed black box, it creates an incredibly powerful psychological vacuum.
Information asymmetry is the foundation of all market advantage. But total secrecy is something else entirely.
It's a multiplier.
Secrecy is the ultimate multiplier for public curiosity.
Think about it. If this fund were out doing press tours all the time,
Right. If they were publishing white papers on their algorithms and ringing the opening bell at the stock exchange every other week,
the mystique would evaporate almost instantly.
the virality would just die. The public would see the mechanics, they'd critique the math, and demystify the entire process.
A silent entity in a noisy room demands all the attention.
Human psychology abhors a vacuum.
If we are denied the mechanics, we are forced to project our own theories onto that blank canvas.
It is the fundamental rule of suspense.
The shadow on the wall.
Exactly. The shadow on the wall is always more terrifying or more awe-inspiring than the actual object casting it.
By maintaining absolute secrecy, they force the public imagination to construct something far more potent than whatever practical mathematical reality actually exists inside their server rooms.
They elevate themselves from a financial firm to an invisible force of nature.
But this combination, extreme wealth and absolute secrecy, is historically a highly volatile mix.
Very volatile.
I mean, when the public sees incomprehensible wealth generated behind closed doors, the default reaction is usually suspicion.
Pitchforks.
Accusations of theft, assumptions of deep corruption, yet this text indicates a viral fascination, a cheat code reverence.
It doesn't trigger the usual backlash.
Right. How does the narrative survive the natural public resentment of secretive extreme wealth?
That is precisely where the third ingredient comes in to stabilize the entire formula.
The genius trope.
Yes, the genius trope.
Let's examine how that functions as a psychological shield.
The genius trope is a universally recognized cultural narrative. It is the archetype of the lone savant, the oracle.
The line that simply operates on a higher, completely inaccessible frequency than the rest of humanity.
Psychologically speaking, the genius trope is really the only socially acceptable mechanism we have to explain away radical, seemingly impossible inequality.
Oh, that makes so much sense. If someone acquires wealth that transcends normal comprehension, and they do so in complete secrecy, it forces the average person to confront some deeply uncomfortable questions about their own reality.
Questions like, is the system rigged against me?
Am I playing a fool's game? Is all of my hard work fundamentally pointless?
And those thoughts lead directly to societal instability.
But if we apply the genius trope to the benefactors of that wealth,
It resolves the cognitive dissonance.
it provides an escape valve for the resentment.
Exactly. If we believe these individuals are literal geniuses operating on a plane of quantum mathematics that our brains are just physically incapable of grasping, then the inequality becomes much easier to digest.
It sanitizes the dominance.
Perfectly said.
The average investor can tell themselves, well, I didn't lose because the market is corrupt. I lost because I am playing against a mutant intellect.
Right. I could never do what they do, so I don't need to feel bad about my own position in life.
It attributes their staggering success to an innate, almost biological superiority rather than luck, ruthlessness, or a flawed system.
Just look at the mathematical elegance of how these three elements interact in the text.
Let's run through it.
Extreme wealth plus the genius trope, but without secrecy. That yields public admiration. Think of a highly visible tech founder.
Okay, yes.
Extreme wealth plus secrecy, but without the genius trope. That yields intense public resentment and regulatory scrutiny. Think of historic monopolies or shadowy cartels.
The bad guys.
Right. But when you synthesize all three, extreme wealth, total secrecy, and the perceived genius trope, you create an irresistible, unassailable cultural phenomenon.
You build an entity wealthy enough to matter, secretive enough to invite endless projection, and perceived as brilliant enough to demand absolute awe rather than outrage.
It's a masterclass in narrative positioning.
And the text doesn't leave this as an abstract theory either. It actually grounds this phenomenon by naming the specific mythmakers.
Jim Simons and his firm Renaissance Technologies.
Now, because our source material provides no biographical background on Simons, there is no history, no resume, no detailed methodology included in the text, we have to analyze his function purely as a narrative device within this document.
Within this specific framework, Jim Simons operates less as a historical figure and more as the necessary human anchor for the concept of the cheat code.
Because an algorithm is cold?
It's too abstract. An algorithm cannot be mythologized in the same way a human being can.
Every myth requires a protagonist.
Yes. If the Medallion Fund is the magical artifact, Jim Simons is positioned by the text as the wizard who forged it.
His name becomes a placeholder in the public consciousness for the ultimate inaccessible intellect.
And the naming of the firm itself, Renaissance Technologies, is a masterclass in this specific narrative construction.
Corporate nomenclature is always heavily vetted.
Nothing is an accident.
The word Renaissance carries immense, very specific cultural weight.
What does it bring to mind for you?
It immediately invokes a historical awakening, a rebirth, the grand departure from the Dark Ages.
It represents the pinnacle intersection of humanism, high art, deep science, and philosophy.
It evokes figures like Da Vinci or Galileo.
And notice how that word is deliberately paired with technologies.
Right. Where Renaissance implies human enlightenment and artistic intuition, technologies is deterministic.
It's cold, precise, and infinitely scalable.
It implies machinery and flawless execution.
By synthesizing those two concepts, the name Renaissance Technologies projects an aura of absolute intellectual supremacy.
It tells the market and the public exactly how they wish to be perceived.
They're not merely trading equities.
No, they are engaging in high-level scientific and philosophical breakthroughs.
It elevates their pursuit from mere commerce to pure science.
And when you apply the label of science to the extraction of extreme wealth behind a veil of secrecy, it solidifies the genius trope entirely.
It makes their market dominance seem like a natural law rather than a financial strategy.
Which launches us into the final and arguably the most explosive assertion in our source text today.
This is where it gets really intense.
The text claims that Jim Simons and Renaissance Technologies have achieved a mythical, almost conspiracy-level status in American finance.
Let's pull apart the word mythical first.
Yeah, what is the actual threshold for a modern corporate entity? Literally, a group of human beings working in an office somewhere to become an actual myth.
To answer that, we have to look at the function of mythology throughout human history.
Okay, take us back.
Myths were not designed as mere entertainment around a campfire. They were complex narrative frameworks created by societies to explain overwhelming natural phenomena that they could not mechanically understand.
Ancient cultures created myths about deities to explain the terrifying randomness of lightning storms, droughts, or changing seasons.
Exactly. So applying that framework today, the global financial market is our modern equivalent of the weather.
It absolutely is.
It is a massive, highly volatile, incredibly powerful force that dictates the basic conditions of our survival. Yet it often acts in ways that seem entirely irrational or deeply destructive.
The market crashes, jobs disappear, completely out of nowhere.
And if a single entity appears to have mastered this chaotic modern weather,
If they possess a cheat code.
right, if they have a code that allows them to navigate and extract wealth from this storm with absolute unwavering consistency, their existence transcends the realm of impressive business acumen.
They become mythic.
They are viewed as having tamed the natural force itself. They are no longer just participants in the ecosystem. They are perceived as the architects of it.
But the text pushes past mythical and enters a much darker territory.
It does.
It says they have an almost conspiracy-level status.
When does public perception cross the line from awestruck myth-making into outright conspiracy?
At what point does looking at a genius turn into looking for a shadow government,
The bridge from myth to conspiracy is always built over an epistemic void.
meaning a lack of knowledge?
Exactly. It goes back to the absolute secrecy we discussed earlier. Conspiracy theories inevitably take root when there is a massive gap between a highly visible outcome and the public's understanding of the mechanics behind that outcome.
The public can see the undeniable results. They see the billions of dollars, the unparalleled market dominance.
But because of the black box, they have absolutely no access to the how.
And human nature cannot tolerate that level of cognitive dissonance for long.
We just can't.
When we cannot see how someone is winning so consistently in a system we believe to be highly competitive, our brains struggle to bridge the divide with logic alone.
We default to suspicion.
The public begins to assume that if the front door is locked, they must have built a secret back door.
The conspiracy level status mentioned in the text doesn't necessarily mean the public believes they're literal shapeshifters or something absurd.
Right.
It implies a pervasive belief that they possess a level of systemic control or hidden access that borders on the impossible.
It is the assumption that the game isn't just being played flawlessly, but that the board itself is being fundamentally manipulated from the shadows.
Now, I want to pause right here.
Good idea.
Because this is a crucial juncture in our deep dive, and we must be absolutely clear with you, the listener.
Yes, let's establish the boundaries here.
What we are doing today is a strict textual analysis of the provided source material. We are analyzing the status of these entities exactly as described in the text.
The text states they have a conspiracy-level status in the eyes of the public.
And we are exploring the psychological, linguistic, and cultural mechanics of why the American public projects this onto them.
We are impartially breaking down the ingredients, the wealth, the secrecy, the genius trope that lead to this specific public perception.
We are not taking a side. We are not endorsing or validating any actual financial conspiracy theories regarding Renaissance technologies or any other entity.
No, we are solely mapping the anatomy of their reputation as dictated by our source text.
That is a vital distinction to make. We are merely observing the mechanics of a cultural phenomenon.
And what is truly staggering about this phenomenon is how it operates as a perpetual motion machine.
It really is a completely self-sustaining narrative feedback loop.
How does that loop sustain itself without external input? Let's walk through the cycle.
It initiates with the original success, the discovery of the cheat code.
Yeah.
That success generates the first massive wave of extreme wealth. To protect the intellectual property behind that wealth, the entity locks down into absolute secrecy.
Okay, step one complete. The black box is established.
The public then observes the extreme wealth emanating from that black box. To explain this pairing without succumbing to existential dread about the fairness of the market, society applies the genius trope.
The psychological shield is deployed.
The application of the genius trope, combined with the impenetrable secrecy, elevates the entity from a successful fund to a mythical status. This mythical status makes them a subject of intense viral fascination. This triggers the U.S. audience effect we analyzed earlier.
The hacker ethos kicks in.
Exactly. But this massive influx of public attention is met entirely with continued silence.
Because they never break secrecy.
Which breeds deep suspicion, pushing their reputation heavily toward the conspiracy level.
And the brilliance, or perhaps the sheer inevitability of the loop, is that having a mythical conspiracy-level reputation actually serves to protect their secrecy even more effectively.
It's the perfect camouflage.
Anyone attempting to understand their actual mechanics is immediately overwhelmed by the sheer density of the myth. The narrative itself becomes a smokescreen.
And as they continue to operate in secret, generating even more extreme wealth, the entire cycle spins faster and grows larger.
The more wealth they accumulate, the more secretive they remain.
The tighter the secrecy, the deeper the public leans into the genius trope.
And the more genius they appear, the more deeply entrenched their mythical and conspiracy-level status becomes.
It is the ultimate Rorschach test for modern capitalism.
A Rorschach test. I love that.
When people look at the Medallion Fund through the lens of this text, they see a reflection of their own deeply held beliefs.
They see the absolute triumph of pure mathematics.
Or the terrifying reality of a deterministically rigged game.
Or the ultimate hacker-infused expression of the American dream.
Or the shadowy, unapproachable pinnacle of institutional power.
It is genuinely remarkable to step back and view the sheer architectural scale of what we've uncovered today.
It's expansive.
We began this deep dive with a piece of source text that was incredibly brief, just a few concentrated lines. And from that singular point, we have mapped out an entire universe of cultural psychology.
We really went everywhere with this.
We transitioned from the visceral nostalgia of inputting a video game cheat code to debating the existential dread of a solved global economy.
We deconstructed the emotional triggers that cause complex financial narratives to go viral.
Targeting the unique vulnerabilities of the American mindset.
We observed the alchemy of that viral trifecta. noting how the gravitational pull of extreme wealth, when cloaked in the information void of absolute secrecy, forces society to invoke ancient storytelling archetypes.
Like the genius trope.
Exactly. Just to maintain cognitive balance.
He analyzed how the names Jim Simons and Renaissance technologies function not just as corporate identifiers, but as the modern equivalents of mythic wizards and magical artifacts.
Synthesizing human enlightenment with cold, deterministic machinery.
And we navigated that razor-thin boundary between awe and suspicion, examining how unparalleled success, in the complete absence of transparency, inevitably births a mythical, conspiracy-level status in the public imagination.
I would offer a call to action for you, the listener, based on all of this.
That's what they take away.
Take the analytical framework we've developed during this deep dive and actively apply it to the broader world.
Use it as a lens.
The next time you encounter a viral narrative about a secretive AI startup or an impossibly wealthy tech visionary or a sudden, unexplainable shift in global markets, look for these foundational elements.
Search for the cheat code narrative.
Identify the intersection of extreme wealth, absolute secrecy, and the deployment of the genius trope.
Ask yourself whether you are looking at raw facts or if you are witnessing a modern myth being actively constructed to manage public perception.
Understanding this architecture allows you to see the actual machinery behind the virality.
We have spent this entire session analyzing how the public projects this towering mythical status onto secretive entities and how a hypothetical cheat code disrupts the concept of a fair market.
We've covered a lot of ground.
But I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to turn over in your mind long after this deep dive concludes.
Let's hear it.
If a firm, any firm, truly did discover a flawless mathematical cheat code to the global economy,
A perfect system.
a perfect system capable of extracting limitless compounding wealth, would they ever actually use it to its maximum potential?
That is the question.
Or would the ultimate transcendent act of genius be to artificially throttle their own returns, to deliberately limit their wealth and hide their true capability, just to ensure the system doesn't collapse, the authorities don't intervene, and the rest of the world never realizes the game has been permanently broken?
Something to seriously consider.
Think about that. Until next time, keep questioning the code.